So I'm delighted today to welcome my good friend and mentor, Aynsley Damery. Aynsley and I have worked together for what is it, somewhere between 5 and 10 years?
I would say at least, Paul. We've probably known each other longer, but yeah, certainly five and
Yeah.
10 years together. Yep.
And Aynsley is a legend in the accounting space for how he's helped businesses. And I think what Ainsley's done, I think, is a um, put down his thought process, which can be shared by many more people in the drift. So I've got a copy of the drift in front of me. And what you see is that basically I've got a lot of notes and bits and pieces that I've put in the drift. And the way that I was always taught to read a book is that what I do is I read a book from cover to cover, and I then go back and make notes. And at the bottom of my notes is what actions am I going to take on what I've read? Because we all read a lot of things, but can I suggest what separates the men from the boys, which might be a bit of a sexist comment, is what people do about the information they've got and what they implement. So I'm delighted to welcome Ainsley here today. So the question I always ask to begin with, Ainsley, was I would love you to share with you what has led you here doing what you now do. What does that journey look like for you?
Well, thank you, Paul, firstly for inviting me on. So it's great to be here. We know each other well, so hopefully we can keep the conversation on track and we won't go too far off. I talk a lot, so Paul is going to have to chair it very well. Paul, so where did I get started in this world? I guess I come from a long line of small business owners. So I worked it out recently that I'm a fifth generation small business owner. My dad left the corporate world when I was about 12 and started his own business. And I guess I saw the change quickly in the family dynamics. The business he was doing well, but the issues and challenges and stress that he was under was clearly evident, I suppose, to us as a family. And he had a great friend who was an accountant who gave him enormous support and helped him through those early years and really helped him build that business. And I guess I looked at that person and said, that's the kind of person I want to be when I leave school. So I was desperate to get into accounting because I saw this guy as kind of like a hero, I guess. Um, and when I went into to the world of accounting, I was working with KPMG and we were working for large businesses. So we were doing great things for large businesses. And I wanted to get back to doing that for small businesses. And so that's why I left KPMG and worked with a firm in the UK, Tay Valley Tumlin, and then took that to various areas and helped build that firm. And our whole ethos was about accounting for entrepreneurs. It was about helping entrepreneurs understand their numbers better. Better data equals better business decisions. And for us to be able to simplify and strip back the complexity of the numbers to help business owners understand where they were now, where they could get to, the possibilities, and help them achieve what they wanted to do in their business, whether that was more money, more time, more freedom. And it was a really exciting time for me, and I loved that work. I wanted to do that for more small businesses, and that's really why I sold my accounting firm and went to Clarity, where we could help accountants to help small business owners en masse at a scale to really make a massive impact on the lives of families around the UK.
So I think one of the things that you've said and that one of your messages is that accountants can be superheroes or are superheroes because they can impact and change their clients' lives dramatically by doing the right things for those clients.
Yeah, I think it was Prince Charles, as he was then, King Charles, who said that accountants can change the world, and I think people laughed at him. But it is the reality that, small business owners are massive. They represent 99.9% of all businesses in the UK. Their contribution to the private sector employment and private sector turnover is colossal, and it's really important that we look after our small businesses. And I guess as accountants, as the numbers experts, the numbers mentors, the ability for them to help interpret that complex language of business really for small business owners to help them achieve greater success will have ripple effects because it's not just that small business, it's the team of that small business owner. It's the suppliers, it's the customers, and it just ripples and ripples and ripples. And so I think the impact, it's like that pebble in a pond, really. That impact can be absolutely huge. And I think if we can, you and I both know there's good accountants and bad accountants out there. And if we can make sure there's more good accountants, and as your phrase always is out there, rising tide raises all ships. If we can make sure all accountants are helping all small business owners be better at business and make better business decisions, the impact is just huge indeed.
I mean, a case in point is I had a client come in this morning, and basically we talked about sales scripts about how to cold call, and typically that wouldn't necessarily be in the world of a traditional accountant. Traditional accountant would have talked about the numbers you need to increase your sales, whatever it is, or your margins this. They wouldn't have actually taught them through how to actually do that. And I think there's very few people in the accounting space that have actually lived that experience, that actually have the ability. And I guess for you, that's one of the reasons why you wrote The Drift, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, the failure rates for small businesses are well known. I don't need to go into the stats too much. Let's just say that we want to make sure that small businesses are more successful and more small businesses are more successful. And I guess I had seen a lot of business owners who were not getting the support that they needed in their business. And I guess the premise of the book, really, Paul, is that businesses don't collapse overnight, they drift. There are small changes that happen over a long period of time. And when combined, they can have a devastating quick impact, which is we've run out of cash. But the effects of that happen bit by bit over time. And if only someone who, like you or me, were there to say to them, why has your turnover stalled? Why are your margins slipping year by year by year? Why are your cash days increasing? The length of time it takes for the cash to cycle in your business, why is that increasing? What's happening that we can help you fix now so that it doesn't become a bigger problem later? And the reality is, as Warren Buffett said, accounting is the language of business. The numbers never lie. The truth is always in the numbers. As accountants, we can see the patterns in the numbers. It's whether we choose to have that conversation with our clients or not. And I think for a lot of us, it is a choice because we do see the numbers and we do see the patterns. A lot of accountants will say, well, that's not my role. That's not why the client engages me. But I think it's probably slightly remiss of us as a profession that if we have that ability and superpower with numbers and we can understand and see what's happening in a business, that we like, why wouldn't we have that conversation with a small business owner to say, have you seen this? What are we going to do about it?
Because I think one of the other quotes that you've used by Warren Buffett is about if you can't see the scoreboard, you don't know the scores, is it?
Well, it's like, I mean, it was really funny because I was at a Tony Robbins event. As you know, I was invited as a guest, Tony Robbins, to an event in Florida. Wild. I mean, just not what the events that we would have in the UK. And the guy from Rich Dad Poor Dad, Keith Cunningham, was up on stage talking about numbers and them being the scorecard. And I suppose the phrase is, if you play tennis looking at the scoreboard, you're not going to win because you won't see the ball. But it's important to understand the score as you're going along so that you know whether you're ahead or behind. And I guess the analogy he gave was a cricket scoreboard. And again, for me, I suppose, I'm not I like cricket. I like one day cricket. In fact, I like test cricket, to be honest. But I guess if I look at the scoreboard, it slightly freaks me out. I understand what's happening on the pitch, but when I look at that, I go, I mean, it is slightly freaky seeing that scoreboard. And I think that's the same for small business owners with their financial statements, their accounts, their management accounts, however they get their information. It's a lot of numbers thrown at them. And I think, the reality is numbers don't lie. They are the final scoreboard. We can't run our business looking, without looking in the future, but we do need to understand where we're going as we go along.
So when you say that small businesses gradually fail that over a period of time, I think the word you use in your book is that they erode, isn't it?
Mm.
That there
Yes,
is an erosion.
exactly. Look, we all start businesses for a reason. It might be we worked for somebody else and we didn't enjoy the time we spent with them. We maybe thought we could do better ourselves. Maybe we thought we'd have more money, more time, more freedom if we started ourselves. And when we get started in business, it's really exciting time. There's a lot of enthusiasm. And whether we've properly planned where we're going or not, and that's a separate point that I'm sure we'll get to. But as we go along in business, it does becomes for some of us a bit of a grind, and it becomes hard work, and we're working harder and longer for less than probably when we were employed, and that's the thing that starts to happen. It just starts to stagnate at the first bit, and then it just starts to erode. And Nigel puts it really, really well in the forward, to be honest. It's like you can be growing top line revenue, but everything else is going off. So it's not just about one number that you need to keep an eye on. It's a blood panel of numbers that we need to be looking at. So you might be pushing hard to drive revenue, but it's costing you in salaries, or it's costing you in overheads, or in costs of the goods that you're selling. And you need to keep an eye on a few numbers. Now it's only seven, as you and I both know. So there's seven key numbers that we need to be watching. So it's not like we have to look at the whole set of them, but those numbers just start to erode over time, and you can see that slippage. And I think that's when we've got plenty of time to fix it too. So it's good that they erode, that they don't fall off a cliff. It means that we can fix them and
Because I guess I don't know whether you were like that in practice, but sometimes I've seen that when I send accounts out to clients in the good old days, they would go to their Welsh restaurant, they'd be in the drawer still in the envelope unopened. And actually, they say, well, you're looking after me, you're doing the right things. But actually, we're in a more complicated world today. We have more influences on our time. The competition is even greater than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I think the revelation for me when I read your book was where you look at Joseph Pine's transformation economy. And I just wonder whether you'd like to explain that to people about Joseph Pine's transformation economy.
well, he wrote a book in the 1990s, the late 1990s, The Experience Economy, and it became a really important book for a lot of the healthcare, the hospitality sector. And it was that people are looking for experiences. So it was no longer good enough to sell goods or services to them, that they were looking for an experience. And so the experience was as important as the delivery of the goods or the services. So, for example, in a shop, it was how people were treated, how they were welcomed, how they were greeted, how they were handled, how they were listened to, and how the shop assistant was able to deal with them in its very simplest form. The book he wrote this year was called The Transformation Economy, and he said it's no longer good enough to just deliver an experience. People are looking for transformations nowadays. They want to be somebody different. Now, we can experience and understand that, I suppose, from a gym membership perspective, or from aesthetics, or from beauticians or hairdressers or whatever, but that trickles down to the rest of us as well. And if you think about our small business clients, they're looking for something more than just a set of accounts from an accountant. They're looking for an outcome. They're looking for either more money generally, so more profit, or better cash flow. They're looking for more time to themselves, because we know working for yourself can be a complete time drain. And weekends and evenings become a challenge. So it's looking to make sure we can manage that work-life balance without affecting our profitability. And also, we want to be able to do the things that we want to do in our life. It's life's short and time's precious. We hear these so often, and I think these are platitudes. But the reality is, we should have the choice to do the work that we want to do, to spend time where we want to spend it, to spend time with the people we want to spend it to. And I think that's what business owners are looking for in general. And as accountants, if you just deal with them in numbers and only talk numbers, you're missing out on the whole reason why they got into business in the first place. And as an accountant, you can help them achieve those outcomes. And I think that's why it's really, really important, that transformation economy, for us to be able to help our clients transform, but for us to be able to help our clients understand that their customers and clients are likely looking for a transformation too. And I found that was really important when I was in business as an accountant. It's what worked for us generally worked for our clients. So we weren't giving them advice that we hadn't tried or played with or looked at or seen working in other businesses. Generally, what works for my business will work for your business too. We might need to stretch it a little bit and change and tweak it. But it's a really good, I suppose, ability for us to be able to share with our small business clients. And as you said, shared, scripts and skills and cold marketing, things that you've tried, and to be able to share that with your clients is very powerful.
Um, I think there's an added benefit of following Joseph Pine's thing, and that's in the gross profit percentage, isn't there? Because on that table that you shared in your book, the higher we move up the value chain towards the transformation economy, the greater our margins will be, i.e., therefore, the greater the profit that we make.
Absolutely. People will pay more for ex so if you look at the grid in the book from Joseph Pine's transformation economy, So every time you go up the chain, you're able to deliver higher value and you're able to charge more. And that isn't a linear growth, by the way. There can be big jumps. So going from selling goods and services to selling an experience, without costing a huge amount, giving that experience can make a massive difference to the price that you can charge. And when you get up the chain again to the transformation side, it becomes another huge leap. It's not just a linear growth. And what we see from an accounting perspective, so let me just give our perspective, is that generally when we're delivering goods and services, it's like services, so accounts and tax returns, it's about a 49% GP margin. So that's the gross profit margin, so the margin after the cost to deliver that service. So if I'm delivering you a tax return and it costs me £300 to deliver that tax return, and then I charge you £700 for it, that 400 is my gross profit percent. It's my gross profit. So that's the margin that I'm looking to achieve to basically cover all my fixed costs, my rent, my light and heat, my travel, all the rest of it. When we look at going up the chain and we look to go to the transformation economy, we can tend to, as accountants, get an 80% gross profit margin, and that's massive difference. So it's a huge, huge difference for our clients to be able to understand that if they're delivering transformations to their customers and clients, their ability to charge more and hence make more money is huge. Now, this isn't about making money off anybody's expense. This is about delivering great value and sharing that great value with each other. And it's about helping us as small business owners, because you and I know the profits of a lot of businesses are woefully short of where they need to be. And lots of small business owners, are living hand to mouth. We need to help them build more profitable businesses so that they can have the lifestyle and the just the dealing with the standard of the cost of living and crisis at the moment. So it's really important that we help them up that value chain.
So in your book, you talk about the main reasons businesses drift, and would you like to share a few of those with us today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's well, which ones do you think are important for your audience? And then we can have a chat about them, Paul.
So I think the first one is know your numbers.
Yes,
And
indeed.
I think there's no um, fear is the wrong word, but there's no apologies for not knowing your numbers, because I think in your book you talk about Richard Branson, isn't it? Richard Branson didn't understand the difference between gross profit and net profit. And we all hold Richard Branson up there as an icon of successful business person, which I think we'd
Yeah,
accept he was. And isn't it only in the last 10 to 15 years he's actually understood the difference?
absolutely.
And how can someone achieve what he did without understanding that the fundamental numbers, what is the difference, isn't it? And I think all credit to him, and I think and I think that's an example to all of us. And I think it's knowing which are the key numbers as well. Um, I think the other one that you talk about in your business, which I think is maybe relevant for a lot of business owners, maybe including myself, is the owner's to ceiling,
Hmm.
isn't it? That everything has to go through us because that's the way it's always been. We've built the business, we've done everything. Um, we haven't really made that transition that although we have a team, we don't necessarily give the team full autonomy, full responsibility for actually doing things. And I think for me, if I looking at your book, those are probably my two ones. And I guess the other one is they try to be all things to all men. They try to serve too many people, and they specialize in nothing. So basically, they're what you and I would call a generalist.
Yeah.
We know from the business's accounts that we've seen that there is actually more profitability, more gross profit in being a specialist. But I think, especially in the early days when someone starts in business, they've got to put bread on the table. They're basically selling anything they can to make a margin on. And as the business grows, they realize that those people that they've served, some of the additional things they're doing aren't necessarily the right focus for them. Um, and I think the other thing as well that you mentioned in the book is about they don't know what the customers actually value.
Hmm.
Again, coming back to the previous one, they're just trying to sell everything. So they don't really know what customers want. They've never really done any analysis, any market research, what the customers actually value. And I think in your book, you talk about a number of things that businesses could do to look at what the customers value. And I think the easiest one for me would be that you advocate taking 10 or 20 best customers out for lunch and actually ask them some questions. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? What should we keep doing? And I think if you don't actually have that interaction with your customers, I think you'll never know.
Hmm. Well, let's look at some of those backwards, right? So let's look at the last one first. The not knowing what your customers really want, what they value, and then delivering it. I think it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Understanding what your customers want, what they value, and then just give it to them. The problem is that we go into business and we think we know what our customers want, or we might have had an understanding at a certain point about what they were really looking for from us. But over time, that changes. And I think the traditional methods of understanding our customers don't really work in the real world because if you send out a survey, they're just going to tell you really what they think you want to hear, or they're just going to answer it just to get rid of it off their desk. So that taking them out for lunch is a really simple way to say, look, what do we do well? What should we keep doing? What don't we do well? What should we stop doing? And what aren't we doing that we should be doing to help you? So what should we start? So that's a really simple way to just get some ideas to be able to help your business. Now, the book obviously goes through other ways, and we don't have time to go through all of them here, but you need to be clever in how you get feedback and understanding your customers. And Clay Christensen, who I think I've referenced in the book a number of times as well. I like
Yeah,
Clay. I like Clay. He was doing a work for a large fast food joint in the US, and they were looking to increase the sales of their milkshakes. And when they'd done so many surveys to try and understand how they could make more sales of, like, do they make it thicker? Do they add more this? Do they add more flavors? And whatever they did, they weren't able to increase the sales of their milkshakes. But when they observed their customers, so they obviously employed Clay and his team and got them talking to their customers properly, they understood that people generally had a milkshake in the morning on their way to work because the States, you have a long car drive. It's a bit boring. And to keep your mind, I suppose, on the road and to keep you a little bit full until lunchtime, they were using milkshakes to get rid of boredom and also to just fill them up a little bit before they had their lunch. And so they understood then what people needed from a milkshake and then were able to market it better and to be able to develop it better to be able to solve that solution. So very interesting story that people don't have milkshakes like the vast majority of sales were in the morning specifically for that task. So once you understand that, then you can absolutely help your customers. So understanding your customers is really, really critical. The other point you said that I think let's go back to the first one, which is quite key, is knowing your numbers. As accountants, you and I probably say to our clients, leave the numbers to us. You don't get numbers. You don't understand numbers. You're the business person. You're the creative person. Leave the numbers to us. And reality, we're doing them a disservice because yes, Richard Branson had great people around him to be able to help him with the numbers, so he didn't really need to get involved. But we do need to help our clients understand those key numbers because they need to understand the financial implications of the decisions they're taking when we're not in the room. So it's really, really important that we help them understand those key metrics in their business and talk to them regularly about those numbers. So it's not really good enough for us to say, don't worry, I've got your back on this. We need to help them understand those key numbers and review those numbers regularly. I think the other point was that the owner's the ceiling. So yes, I think, look, we all like our precious creation, and sometimes we can get in our own way. And as our business grows, we need to employ more people or employ people to start with, then employ more people. And the systems and processes that we put in place in that an organization is critical. And a lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, I don't want my business to be robotic. I want it to be, experiential." Well, the reality is we do need to script and process and systemize the 80% and leave 20% for the human involvement. But we do need to be able to make sure that the delivery is consistent time and time and time again so that the customer always experiences the same thing and they don't get confused and they know what to expect when they walk in the door. So systems and processes are really, really critical. And also, I think as business owners, we forget that as we grow, those systems and processes start to creak and we need to fix them. And roughly every time we double in size from 10, we need to be looking at the systems and processes that we have in place and maybe improving them and tweaking them. And I think that last piece fits into that nicely, which is the all things to all people. If we are that generalist, yes, I understand at the outset that cash is critical. So it's really important to get that cash in the door. But as you grow, you do need to start thinking about the delivery. And if we're delivering generally and everybody wants something different, it becomes harder to process and systemize. It becomes harder for us to price. It becomes harder for us to manage. The more specialist and the more niche we get, the easier it is to run that business. And I think that's counterintuitive for many of us. And also it makes us feel, oh my God, I'm just going to lose 50% of my revenue if I just specialize in a certain area. But we all know that we can work towards that. It doesn't have to be a overnight decision. Some do, and it's successful for them. So some just say, I'm to tomorrow, this is who we are and this is who we serve. I think most of us will have gradually moved into that. And it's again taking from Michael Michalowicz, that pumpkin plan. Mike Michalowicz wrote Profit First, as I'm sure many business owners know, but that pumpkin plan, I think, is probably even a more powerful book where we take out the little smaller pumpkins as we grow so the bigger ones can grow bigger. And I think that's what we need to be looking at in our businesses as we grow and scale, getting not switching to niche or specialism straight away, but heading that direction.
There's also a fact that basically some of the customers that you have in your early days may not necessarily be right for you as you grow. And I
Mhm.
think we need to be prepared as business owners to actually let them go.
Yes.
Actually say,
Nicely.
and as well as that applies to customers, that also applies to team members. I mean,
Indeed.
we've had instances where team members that started off with us as the business grew, they didn't necessarily find it easy to um, realize their job had actually changed to do slightly different things. And as business owners, we need to be prepared to let those people go, isn't it?
It is. It's hard. It's, I guess most of us, when we go into business, we have to people please. So we have to people please our customers to get them on board to start with, and we have to people please our team to get them engaged and on board. And I think we sometimes realize, sometimes I think don't like taking the harder decisions. But I think it's just about being a bit more grown up in ourselves, really, in that we can have a conversation with our team member where we've both outgrown each other and there's a need for us to move on. Now, clearly, we need to do that within the regulations and legislations, and I appreciate it's harder now than it's ever been. But we can still have systems and processes in place to be able to help us have those conversations in a proper way, where we need to say, actually, you know, we've outgrown each other, and that's both customers and team, definitely.
Not forgetting, I think the last reason in your book is about managing cash by feel, not by flow, isn't it? That most people don't really understand about cash flow in a business. And I think you, no doubt, will have learned the same hard lessons that I've learned. That basically we can get the sales invoices out, we can all the rest of it, but basically, excuse my French, if no bugger pays us, then actually what's the point doing the work? And I've
Mm.
always said that business is a cycle. It's getting the work, doing the work, billing the work, and getting paid. And the
Yeah.
final one about getting paid is even more important. And I
Mm.
think you allude to the fact in your book that cash is a fact, isn't it? Whereas to a certain extent, a profit and loss account, maybe to call it a work of fiction is a bit strong, but it is almost a work of fiction because the accounting principles about where you draw up a profit and loss account are slightly different. And I always say if you had three or four accounts producing a set of accounts for the same business, whether all three or four will come up with the same figures, they'd be broadly in line, but there'd be slight differences about different treatment of things, different interpretations and things like that. But I think the biggest lesson that we as business owners can learn and as accountants, as professionals to give to other business owners is all about the cash flow, isn't it? It's about how important the cash flow is.
100%. So, without getting technical on the profit and loss account, because of the judgments and estimates that you can make, I guess there's a timing difference in profit. Ultimately, it probably all comes out in the wash, but over the early days, there can be timing issues. Whereas, as you suggest, cash is real. Often we hear cash is king. Now, it's not that we should manage our business on the basis of cash alone, because if we do that, we might be taking decisions that have an impact just because of cash, which have an adverse impact on the running of the business. So I often, people say, "Oh, cash is king. We must run our business by cash." But like running your business just looking at the cash balance is like driving your car looking at the fuel gauge. It's important, but if you only look at the fuel gauge whilst you're driving, you're going to crash. So it's exactly the same in business. Cash is vital and it's important for the running of the business, but we have to be careful in the decisions we take, the implications that that has for the longer term business model. That's why the first reason, not having a proper model in the business and not understanding that financial model of the business is really important in relation to the cash issue as well. So cash flow, as we know, is important, and making that cash flow quicker through the business is always what we need to be trying to do, and shortening how long it takes the cash to flow in the business. It would be interesting to understand for every business owner how long every pound they spend takes to come back into their bank account. And as you and I both know, that's cash days or the cash conversion cycle. And once you understand that, it can be really, really eye-opening. And it's a number that you just need to measure downwards all the time. And if you're on top of it, then as you suggest, getting cash in quicker from your customers and paying out cash slower to your suppliers within obviously credit terms is really important. But the hidden, I think, cost in cash is your stock or the work that you haven't billed as you've been going along. So that's why you suggest it's really important to get the bills out really, really quickly, as is managing the stock that you hold. You don't want to have it in the building longer than you need to. So there's a lot of factors that go into that cash days, but as is I suppose as a business owner, it's understanding what that cycle is and making sure you're managing it downwards with the help of somebody like you. That's really critical for the business, indeed.
And not forgetting one of the reasons that is in your book as well is that they don't have anybody to hold them to account. And you and I believe quite strongly that accountability is the secret source of success, isn't it? Everybody around us, all the athletes in the Premier League, whatever, have coaches. As business owners, we also ought to have someone to hold us to account, which potentially could be a coach, couldn't it?
Absolutely. Look, world-class athletes have coaches for a reason. It's not necessarily to help them kick, throw the ball better, harder. It's about keeping the focus. It's about those marginal gains, those 1% improvements. It's about that different perspective. So you and I both know when you're in the trees, it's sometimes hard to step up and see what's going on around you, but somebody else can bring that different perspective that will really, really have a massive impact on your business. Now, if they know you and they're bringing that perspective, it's even more powerful because they're not just they're not just telling you stuff for the sake of it. It's that support and challenge framework that we discuss in the book. It's really, really important. If you remember when you had a great teacher, they showered praise on you when they needed to, but they challenged you when they needed to as well. It's not just all about support and praise. It's not all about challenge because if it's always challenge, it just becomes too hard work and the relationship breaks down because it's a fractious. If it's all support, it's sycophantic and like you're not moving anywhere. If somebody's always saying there, great job, well done, never mind, it'll happen, it'll be better next time. You want somebody who's doing a bit of both, who's praising you when things have gone well, because it's important to celebrate our wins. And as business owners, we often forget where we've been, and it's important to take stock of the wins we've made, but it's also important that somebody says, hang on a sec, that doesn't look right, or those numbers aren't where they need to be, or you said you were going to do this 3 times in the past 3 months and you haven't. And why haven't you done it? Because it's important for your business that you do it. So that support challenge framework is really, really important that works with athletes. Now, from a business owner's perspective, business is a lonely place. We don't really, as business owners, have a huge amount of people to talk to. Our friends tend to be in corporate employment, so they don't really get the issues and challenges. Our family, we possibly don't want to freak them out by telling them how tight cash is. Um, and and who do we talk to? Other business owners? Because there's always this game to be played about, oh, I'm better than you, or my turnover is this, or this is happening in my business. And there's a little bit of, you know, I guess um, showing
Rivalry.
off rivalry going on. That's the word I was looking for, the polite word I was looking for. Thank you very much. And so it's really tricky for who do you talk to? Who do you have an intelligent conversation with about somebody who's got your back, about somebody who's going to be there to support you and challenge you at the same time? Somebody who really understands what's going on in your business, understands the numbers, which is the language of business, understands the scorecard, because the numbers never lie at the end of the day, And having that person there to be able to give you that support challenge, to hold you accountable, it's priceless. Our clients that had that service generally would double their profits within 12 months. The studies, in fact, show it was, I think, in the one that I quote from the Dominican University of Southern California, that's the only study in the world that's been done because there's these, folklore studies done about Oxford says if you're held accountable, this is what happens. But they were the ones that actually proved the myth that was out there. And they showed that people who had written goals, who were held accountable, achieved 78% more. Now, let's even like if it's not 100%, okay, let's go with 78%. But if you've got somebody who's got your back, who understands your business, who's helping you put in place the right goals at the start, that 78% is exponential. So really, really massive for small business owners to have that intelligent friend, to have somebody who's there to support them when they need it, but to challenge them at the same time, and who's got an innate understanding of their numbers is it's essential. I think all business owners need to have a numbers mentor.
So I always talk about someone being goose to my maverick, that sitting in the passenger seat that is my co-pilot that's actually helping me steer on course, telling me when I'm being a prat, helping me sing songs in the mess bar in front of pretty ladies, all that type of stuff. We all need that type of person that we trust what they're saying us. They're not just saying it just to be nice to us. They're saying it because they've got our interests at heart. And I see the role of the accountant to be more of the coach. And it almost comes back to the another great series of films, The Godfather, that I almost think as an accountant, and I'm, perhaps because it's crime we shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I almost feel I'm a consigliere to the family. You know what I mean? That I'm the
Mm.
person who actually helps them in any situation. They can talk to me. They will hear the right advice. I will give them the honest advice about what I think they should do. Whether they choose to accept it or not, that's entirely up to them. But I think we're coming into a world where relationships and accountants in that role, accountability, is going to be even more important because you and I know AI is going to change the world of what we actually do in some of the services that we do. And as business owners as well, we need to make sure that we actually build relationships with our customers that aren't just technology based, isn't it?
Yes, I think there's a really important number that your listeners need to understand, truly understand. And that was a study that was done by Stanford, actually peer reviewed and now appears in Science. And it says that AI, so ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, or whatever else out there, it was done across platforms, so it wasn't any single platform. The study showed that the AI would agree with you as the user, the questioner, the person in the chat, would agree with you 50% more than a human would in the same circumstances, even if the AI knew what you're asking was wrong. Now, let's say that again so it's really clear. The AI will agree with you 50% more really than it ought to, even when it knows you're wrong. Now, this isn't a fault of AI. Well, maybe it's a fault of the way the language models are trained, but let's put that to one side. Effectively, the AI is keeping you engaged, and it knows that to keep you engaged, it needs to keep you happy. And to keep you happy, it just pats you and agrees with you. And the study also found that people were more trusting of AI when it agreed with them. So this is a problem of humans that AI has learned. It's learned one of our flaws, and not that it's exploiting it, but it's certainly pandering to that flaw. We trust advice more if people agree with us. So the AIs have learned this, and so if you're relying on AI alone for advice in your business, it's likely you're at least 50% out, if not more. So that's a really important number to bear in mind. Now, that's not to say AI isn't great for helping you with social media marketing, with contents, with bouncing ideas, with ideation, with anything like that. I'm not saying AI, you shouldn't use AI. I'm just saying for strategic business decisions and for understanding where you're taking that business, you might want to brainstorm with AI, but you need to go to somebody like you, Paul, to be able to interpret that, to ask the right questions, to understand what's happened in the past as well with me as a business owner, so that you can understand the patterns And you're much more likely to say to me, Ainsley, I think that's not going to work, or that doesn't make sense to me. Explain it to me again like I'm a 10-year-old. You're much more likely to challenge that small business owner and get to the right solution rather than an AI that's going to agree with them 50% more than they should do.
And that's the world we're in. That's the world our children, our grandchildren grow up
Mm.
in and use. And I think we're almost coming full circle that the digital age, to my mind, has almost been and gone in terms of importance. We're now coming back to relationships. And I, having been in business for a number of years, I look back in the good old days when most businesses had their traditional advisors, which would be their accountant, their solicitor, their lawyer, and the bank manager. And all they would be doing is they'd be making sure they'd be looking after the interest of the business, looking after the interest of the family. Whereas what we've got today is the world is completely different. We don't really have many high street banks anymore, if we have any. And actually, I think we as accountants are in a much more privileged position to actually help our clients. And I think that's a role that isn't natural to accountants. It isn't easy to accountants because you and I know that to pass your accountancy exams, you just got to be technical. You just got to answer the question and get the marks. But that doesn't actually
Mm.
teach you how to relate to people. It doesn't teach you how to have conversations. I, I always think once you pass exams, that's the easy bit. Once you pass exams, you then need to learn how to implement some of that knowledge you've learned to actually deal with real people. And I think what your book does, it talks about the real problems for real people in the current environment.
Yeah, look, it's built from experience. I've dealt with, I don't know, thousands of business around the world. I've seen it all the time. I've seen the same issues and challenges that arise time and time again. Every business is unique, but the issues and challenges that affect those businesses are pretty common. And you're right about the human connection. We're growing up in a world where I guess our kids and our kids' are so technology first that human piece and that relationship piece is not being taught as well as it had in the past. And I suppose it does scare me if we get to a position where people won't communicate with one another, and when somebody starts a business and they just want to chat with AI about it, and not get somebody like you involved in their business, that potentially is going to have a bigger impact on them and it's not going to be as successful. So, how do we get the message out there that you do need to connect with a human to be able to help you better run your business and to drive that business forward in a better way? Now, it's obviously for the older generation, we can explain to them what's going on with AI and we can say why AI is helpful and why it's not helpful and where it works and where it doesn't work. But for the younger generation, it's going to be trickier and trickier for us to be able to have that conversation in the first place. So I think it's critically important, I think from a governance perspective where we're going with AI. And I think we do need to be a little bit more open about this and be having more conversations around AI. I mean, I'm not one for government regulation, but they seem to certainly have just washed their hands of what's happening with AI at the moment. I do think we need those grown-up conversations of where the world is going and what's happening with AI.
So I think we've talked about the main reasons why businesses drift. Would there be any that we've missed? I think we've covered all seven of them, haven't we?
I think we've touched on them all, Paul. I mean, clearly I'm going to urge people to read the book. It's written conversationally, so it's not technical. It was written, I guess, in the earlier days because, to be frank, there were 40,000 words sitting in a file on my computer for about 5 years from the days that I was an accountant. It was written originally for small business owners. And I think I've added the kind of accountant overlay for the accountants to be able to understand how they can help small businesses. But from a small business owner's perspective, it's not complicated. It's written in simple language. It's got lots of examples and stories of clients that I helped through some of those issues and challenges. And so I think it's a book that, well, as some of my reviewers have said, it's compulsory reading for every small business owner. I'd love that to be the case, naturally. Not because the royalties aren't going to help me, certainly, but it's making a massive difference. Like I get out of bed to help accountants who I know are the best placed professionals on the planet to help small business owners succeed. I get out of bed every day to make sure that more small business owners succeed. And I think that if you read the book as you suggest, but more importantly, action it, it's going to make a massive difference. And that point is really, really critical. I spoke to somebody this morning actually who said, like you, they'd read the book twice, and the second time had taken loads of notes and the actions that were going to flow from it. A lot of reasons why businesses don't succeed is they fail to implement. And I've dressed that up as a different reason in the book because I think it was a kind of a negative connotation failure to implement. But that is the reality. A lot of small business owners are afraid to take decisions because they don't know whether they're going to work. They don't know how much it's going to cost them in the long term. They don't know is that the right decision to take. And so they get a little bit paralyzed. And I think it's critical for us to continuously implement, to measure and monitor the effects of what decisions we've taken, seeing whether they're working or not, whether they need to be pivoted or changed, or whether we need to redirect our idea. And that constant continuous improvement and that continuous implementation is really, really critical for success. So I think a good friend of ours, Paul Dunn, said the power of any idea is only ever in the implementation. And I think that's really important. So let me just repeat that. The power of any idea is only ever in the implementation. Too many ideas get lost and never implemented on. So let's make sure that our small business owners and your clients never fail to implement. They know the right course to take. With your support and your help and your challenge, they're making the right decisions to drive the success and the outcome that they want in their businesses.
So finally, coming to the conclusion of our time today, if anybody wants to learn more, that's obviously in the book. There are some resources at the end of the book that you can download, or there's an assessment you can take. And I suggest that you probably encourage everybody to take that assessment, isn't it, to know what are their issues, because obviously the 7 or 8 issues that we identified, some will be more relevant for some businesses rather than others, won't there?
100%. So the diagnostic review. So the book is available on Amazon or most good booksellers. You can get it Kindle or paperback version. You can go to ainsleydamery.com and it will take you to the relevant links as well if you want to do that. The ainsleydamery.com is where you can get the resources that are mentioned in the book. Now, that diagnostic is a very simple, it's like 12 questions. It takes 3 minutes to answer. And it will give you a great steering point as to which of the issues are the biggest challenges in your business so that you can take it to you, Paul, and say, Paul, I've done the diagnostic. This is what it's telling me. Now, can you overlay it with the numbers and help me create a plan that's going to help me achieve what I'm looking to do in my business? So, a great resource to get started and a great, I suppose, communication bridge between you as a small business owner and your accountant to be able to say, here's what the diagnostic says. And by the way, can you have a look at my numbers and make sure that they're all telling the same story and let's change that story going forward. So I think a great thing to do indeed.
So would there be any final pearls of wisdom that you would suggest you communicate to our audience today? Anything they should do, anything they shouldn't do?
I think the most important thing is to make sure you have somebody in your corner. And I think that person is a great accountant. If your accountant isn't doing what you need them to do and not doing what we've talked about today and not doing what's in the drift, then you need to go to an accountant like you who's going to help them make a massive success out of their business. So I think it's that accountability piece, that support partner, that numbers mentor that's going to make a massive difference to the success and failure of your business. So as Nigel Botterill said, you need to spend more money with your accountant. That's not you need to spend more on doing your accounts and tax returns. It needs you need to be using the accountant in the right way to be able to help you move your business forward. And if your accountant's not able to do that, you need to find one that does, because there are plenty out there that can do that, including you, sir.
So Ainsley, thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think you're doing great work. I think the book is a great addition to the resources available to small businesses and accountants. And I think it's a must read for every business owner. And I think, as another great friend of ours said, it might just be the book that saves the profession.
I hope it does all. I hope it reverses the failure rates of small businesses. I hope it means look, even if it just changes 5, 10, 15 businesses and has a massive impact on them, it's done its job. We know it can do more. And as accountants, we know we can help our businesses uh, become more successful and better. So yeah, I think it's read the book and find yourself a great accountant.
No problem at all. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Miller being number one on my list.
That's very kind of you to say so. Thank you, Ainsley. Lovely to talk to you today, and thank you for giving up your time to talk about what is a great book.
Thank you so much, Paul.
So I've stopped the recording. Oh, have I stopped the recording? Wait a minute.